There's a bit of criticism from some people as well about this sort of development within the scene. What would you say to people that are somewhat critical to the large role that Saudi orgs are playing in the esports scene at the moment?
I can understand, I guess, the concern of some people, but that just became the natural progression of things, especially after the acquisition of ESL by Savvy Gaming Group. Like, if you're playing an ESL tournament, you're already partaking in the Saudi investment, and it's just hypocritical to, pick and choose which one you're going to disapprove of.
Hey, SC Historian here, and today we have a conversation I had with none other than Kelazhur. Diego has been around the scene for ages and has a huge array of experiences and knowledge about the community. Getting his input on things like balance, analyzing growth as a pro, and Saudi investment in esports was a delight. If you're excited about this one, be sure to get subscribed so you don't miss out on future releases with other awesome guests. If you really enjoy what I do, consider supporting me on Patreon. Your support really helps. And now, without further ado, here's my word with Kelazhur.
So, Kelazhur, thank you so much for taking the time today, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, the customary question, how did you first get involved with RTS?
It was actually with StarCraft Brood War. When I was around like 10 years old, this is early 2000s, 2005 or so. That was around the era where internet PC cafes were really big in Brazil. So everyone after school would go to these PC cafes and play like Dota, CS, things like that. But it also had StarCraft Brood War on all the computers. And my older brother, he actually got me into playing StarCraft Brood War with him. So that was basically my segue into the genre.
It's super interesting because, I feel like this PC cafe culture facilitated the growth of specifically RTS. I mean, other games too, but in so many different places, because the story is, of course, the same for Koreans, but also Pig also talked about this, like his early days in Australia, also getting into the game. I think maybe it was Warcraft, but whatever, like through PC cafes.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to me because this culture, at least where I lived, never really developed in America. And I don't know of too many other Americans with this same thing. And I guess it's because so many Americans got computers at home like pretty early. But as a result, it seemed like this sort of sense of like the esports or gaming community didn't really develop in the same way. So I think that's very interesting. But it happened like that in Brazil as well.
Yeah.
So you've been an active pro now for around 9 years. What would you say is like the proudest moment of your career for you?
I think my proudest moment was probably 2017. DreamHack Austin was right after I had a boot camp around 3 months in Korea, and I could feel myself improving quite fast there. I was grinding really hard, and at that point I had already been a pro for around 2 years. But I hadn't advanced past the first round of any offline tournament, to be honest. But at DreamHack Austin 2017, that's when I finally broke through the group stage, made it to playoffs. But not only that, I also ran to the round of 8 after beating Snoot. And Snoot back then was like a monster in ZVT, so it was like a really big accomplishment for me. So I think that, and in general, that year was probably the best year in my career.
Yeah, and that's really only like a couple of years off from Snoot's like real career peak. So, he was definitely quite a formidable player at the time. Now, this is the year that Neeb swept the WC. Who'd you drop out to?
So in DreamHack Austin, that was Nurchill. I lost to Nurchill in the round of 8, and then in the next season I lost to Neeb. Actually, Neeb ended up winning Austin, but I 2-0'd him in the group stage, which is also pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, this is arguably at like the peak of his career. I mean, not even arguably at the peak of his career. That's pretty cool.
That was the year of Neeb.
So, you've represented two, at least in the StarCraft community, pretty legendary teams. Obviously, Team Liquid and then Root Gaming. Clearly they're kind of different organizations. Team Liquid is quite ginormous. What would you say is the biggest difference between representing those two organizations for you?
I'd say one is more informal than the other. Root Gaming, it was like when I first got invited by Katz to join the team, he said, come live with us at the Root Gaming House. And basically, he just said, okay, just come to the house whenever, we'll get you fitted in a room. There wasn't really any prep for it. I literally just showed up and he's like, okay, now you live here. There's like, I don't think I even signed a contract for Root, to be honest. Like I just joined, I was part of the team because he said I was part of the team. Whereas with Team Liquid, it's a lot more bureaucratic, especially because it's in a different time period, but also the size of the organization. I had to wait like a few months for my contract to be drafted, and then I signed it. And they have official channels for you to request things and for them to request things of you. So everything feels a little bit more official. So that's probably the biggest difference.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. Like an organization of that size, there's going to be so many layers of approval and analysis and, sort of multi-level decision making. So that makes a lot of sense, as opposed to having one executive, right, for, in Katz for Root.
Yeah.
So, now you're representing R8 Esports, one of the new Saudi orgs that's entered into the StarCraft scene. Mm-hmm. How'd you end up getting connected with them?
It was actually through Rotterdam. So R8's head of esports, Starfall, he actually got into StarCraft about a year ago, and he got it. I think he's very big on Roddy's channel, like most people are. And I think he ended up having a talk with Roddy about how they could get into the StarCraft scene, and he actually ended up referring me to him, and we went into talks, and we made it happen, basically.
Does it mean a lot to you to have somebody like Roddy pay you that kind of respect and make that kind of recommendation?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I love Roddy. He's not only a great community figure, but he's also a really good friend. So it means a lot to, have him respect me the way he does and help me like that. So yeah, definitely.
Of course. How do you feel about representing, R8's first foray into StarCraft? Does that mean something special to you?
Yeah, it's hard because when they first enter a scene, I'm sure they have really high expectations. I actually did some research on what their history was. Of course, I want to see what the team was all about. And before me, they had teams in other games like Fortnite, FIFA, PUBG. And they only had Saudi players, but even still, they had quite big wins. They were champions in the PUBG scene, like they earned a lot. So for me, it gives me the signal that they expect the same out of me. They want a guy that can win tournaments, that can go far and do really well. So at first, I was a little bit nervous. But in the end, I mean, I'm still a veteran. I'm a 9-year veteran of the game.
Yeah.
I know how to keep calm and collected. But yeah, it definitely gets to me sometimes, especially this tournament. I think I could have done better. Maybe a lot of things I could have done better, and it's a bit disappointing to me, at least.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like it's a big prestigious event, and you want to give a good showing. Especially, I think that's compounded by the fact that you're representing a new org.
Yeah. You never want your debut to go badly.
Of course.
But I think that it usually ends up having the opposite effect.
Yeah. I would also say that, like, I think, anybody who, like, knows anything about the StarCraft scene is going to understand what the level of competition looks like, and that it's not easy, right? Like,
yeah.
There's all these, not just established players, but the game has such an infinite skill ceiling, and so there's such a broad variety of not just tiers, but play styles and different interactions between players. So I would have a hard time imagining that they would be too upset. Of course, they want to maybe see you like do amazing. Like obviously everybody who's supportive of you would,
right.
But I don't think it's something to be too hard about yourself on. So do you have any specific goals as a player right now? Anything in particular that you have in mind that you want to do or achieve or see in yourself?
Specifically, I think I would like to win regionals. I haven't won regionals in a very long time, and especially I never won in a merge region like we have this year. So I definitely would like to be champion, and I would also like to make playoffs of the next offline tournament, which is going to be Dallas. I think those two are probably the most specific goals I have. And after that, if it goes well, I would like to qualify for the World Cup, most importantly.
Of course, yeah. I mean, that's such a monumental happening in the community. I mean, really in like all games right now, more or less. So you mentioned regionals, and in doing a bit of research for this, one thing that really stood out to me, and obviously it's a bit unfortunate, but like it is also kind of fascinating to me that it seems like Special has your number in such in a way that I didn't quite realize. Like, you made so many great runs through different LATAM tournaments, but it seems like for some reason he's a bit of a wall for you. Do you feel like there's a specific reason for that?
I think it was just a clash of styles that was difficult for me, but I put a lot of effort into the last season, and honestly, like the results showed itself. I 3-0'd him in the lower bracket, and I also did really well against Cham, which were basically my two rivals in Latin America.
Yeah.
And then I went on to face the Americans, or the North Americans.
Yeah.
Which I also feel like I did really well. So I think the first wall has been passed in Special. Now I have a second one in Australia.
Sure. Yeah, that's pretty challenging in and of itself too. But I think it's awesome to see that type of growth, like to feel that you're sort of hitting into the same person again and again, and they just to feel figured out, right? That can't be good as a competitor, and so to see that kind of growth, it's obviously really important, I think, for your psyche and your view on your sort of current position in your career. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think
so, how do you gauge growth and success as a player?
Results mostly. It doesn't matter how well you're doing in the ladder, how well you're playing in custom games. In practice, if you're not translating it into tournament results. In my case, I've been doing pretty consistently well in like the weekly cups. Before coming here, I got like top 4 twice in a row in the European Cups.
Yeah.
But most importantly is to translate into offline tournaments. We don't get many of those in StarCraft, so it really is do or die when it comes to these.
Yeah.
You really got to make every one of them count.
Absolutely makes sense. I think a pretty common sentiment from people is like that there's a bit of a huge MMR drop off for most people when competing offline, like theoretical MMR anyways. What I mean, skill level. Do you feel like you're impacted in a similar way, that your skill level in a more comfortable environment at home is significantly different than playing offline?
I feel like I'm pretty inconsistent when it comes to this. Like some people get better, some people get worse. In my case, it could also go either way. For example, even though in Atlanta I ended up losing all of my matches, I still felt like I played really well. I mean, like 1-2 versus Maru, 2-3 versus a Creator. So I definitely had really good games there.
Yeah.
Just needed a little extra something. So I think it can go either way for me.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean that seems quite good to hear, actually, right? Like it's I think a lot of people maybe struggle with this a bit. Obviously, I think you can attribute a lot of this to the length of your career and how long you've been, performing at the top of the scene. So, I mean that makes a lot of sense. How do you feel about the role of the Cyclone these days?
The role of, sorry?
The Cyclone.
Oh, I think the Cyclone definitely shook things up. People have a love and hate relationship with it, mostly hate. I think it changes things completely, but I don't think it's necessarily the only way to play right now. And just because you see it a lot doesn't necessarily mean it is the only way to play. So I think it needs more time to be figured out, but I would also understand if people really want it changed back so bad that it ends up happening.
Yeah, I think it is a bit frustrating for people to see it just featured so frequently. Mm-hmm. But also from a competitive standpoint, like if something's working for people, it seems silly not to keep pushing for it, like as a player, right?
Yeah.
So, how are you feeling about the overall like state of balance in the game at the moment?
It feels, I think in general, it feels nice. Some people say it might be stagnant because the meta has been figured out. And for example, TVZs, you have a lot of games just going into the late game, but that's mostly because Zerg players have just become really good at not dying. So if you want to beat them, you got to take it to the late game. But in terms of win rates, I think it's not bad. It's always hard to determine these things because top players, they usually have a lot of clash of styles. So certain players will do really well against other players and vice versa, which ends up skewing win rates a lot of times. I know a lot of Protoses. It's weird because you have Zergs that complain about Protoses in PvZ, but then you have Protoses that are doing not so good against Zergs.
Yeah.
Win rate wise in this tournament, Zergs did super well against Protoses, but still a lot of them are complaining about Protos, which is just weird.
Yeah.
Everything feels super subjective at the top level, and when you're judging from your own experience, it's just going to sound different from the next guy, even if he plays the same race as you. But in my opinion, even though Protos players seem to be complaining a lot about PvT because of the win rates and Protos representation, and the way I feel, like it feels pretty balanced even when I play someone of my level. Like we both feel like we have a pretty equal chance of winning. In the top level, I don't know, like there's not that many TVP games in the Korean level because there's not that many players left, unfortunately. Yeah. I was hoping that with stats and parring coming back, we might see some revitalization of the matchup, but that still remains to be seen.
It seems like that's a big part of the sort of downfall of Protoss over the last few years.
Yeah.
That so many of the great Protoss minds just moved away from the game. When you talk about North America, Neeb went away, and sure, Estrella did rise up to sort of fill those shoes. But especially in the Korean scene, we had all of these people like Stats and back in the day, Rain, performing at a high level, and from a more aggressive sort of meta style, you had people like SOS. And Hero can sort of still fill those shoes now too. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of those sort of Protoss Titans are just not in the game anymore. So I think that's absolutely a part of it. Of course, balance plays a pretty significant role too. But yeah, I agree. I think it has a lot to do with just not having those greats around at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it always depends how far deep you go, right? Because in the mid-level, like around my level, Protos is super overrepresented, especially in Europe.
Yeah.
But then you go a little bit higher with the top dogs, and then it's underrepresented. So you end up buffing Protos, and then like all the middle guys will disappear. It's just going to be a sea of Protos.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, maybe a Protos will win a tournament or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Even with like kind of more amateur, like low GMs and stuff like that. Yeah, the numbers are crazy. There's a lot of Protoss on pretty much all servers. So it is a bit of a head scratcher sometimes that we don't really see any super high level, Protosses performing. Obviously part of this is also that MaxPax doesn't come to events, and Hero can be a little streaky, and there could be some inconsistency there. But I think that's kind of the nature of that more aggressive and cerebral play style, that he employs in a lot of circumstances. So, what are your expectations for Stormgate?
Right now, I'm trying to not put too much expectation into it because while I have a lot of faith that in the people that are working on the game, like I know a lot of them from StarCraft 2, and I know they're very capable, very smart people. But these things, making a good game is hard. There's no two ways about it. You can't guarantee that you'll make a good game. So I'm just trying not to give myself too much hope, and then it ends up falling short of my expectations. So right now, just kind of taking it as it goes. It would be great if it did well. I'm hoping that it does well. I'll do whatever I can to help, but right now I'm just kind of neutral about it.
How about Zero Space? Like, have you put a lot of thought into that game?
Yeah, I played a little bit of Zero Space, not too much, because I'm mostly been focusing on StarCraft 2. It also seems really interesting, and it has a lot of great people working on it. I'm very hopeful that it'll do well. I think it's always hard to say when it comes to esports, because esports it's such a novelty thing that you never really know how well it's going to do in any game. But in terms of just pure gameplay, design-wise, I think they have a great product. And even if it doesn't go well in esports, it's going to do well in probably in sales or in player base, I'm sure.
Do you see yourself pivoting to another RTS if a scene develops around it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
I think some people maybe have a lot of allegiance to a particular title or something like that. And I don't think that makes a lot of sense. But
it's just dumb.
yeah, fair enough. Okay, yeah, I think I'm on the same page there. So what do you think the keys to success might be for some of these new RTS titles? What do you think they can do that might help them propel to a bit beyond the type of success that we see from StarCraft currently?
The key for RTS games to skyrocket?
Yeah.
Honestly, you just have a good product. make it smooth, make it clean, make it look good. It's an amalgamation of many different factors. It's the same thing. What makes a player good, is not just he has good micro. It's literally everything that he does has to be good, and it's the same for a game. So yeah, you just gotta stick to whatever your game developing process is and make a good product.
Yeah, definitely not an easy question to answer, but yeah, I think that is sort of the essence of it.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of pessimism, I think, about there's a zero-sum mindset, right? That if one game succeeds, that it's going to kill another game. Do you think that there is room within the RTS community to have multiple successful titles?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. We have it in other scenes like MOBAs, for example. You have multiple games. It depends how much you define by what's a healthy player base size. Is it okay if both games have 100K players, or does it need to have a million plus? You need to establish some kind of criteria to define this. But I could see myself playing both games. I've done it before with AoE 4 and StarCraft 2. I don't see why it wouldn't be possible for these two.
So, obviously representing a Saudi org now and seeing the whole scene sort of developing around these Saudi investments and things of that nature, there's a bit of criticism from some people as well about this sort of development within the scene. What would you say to people that are somewhat critical to the large role that Saudi orgs are playing in the esports scene at the moment?
I can understand, I guess, the concern of some people, but that just became the natural progression of things, especially after the acquisition of ESL by Savvy Gaming Group. If you're playing an ESL tournament, you're already partaking in the Saudi investment, and it's just hypocritical to pick and choose which one you're going to disapprove of. But I understand that these things have a lot of nuance to them, and it's always more complicated than what you really see. In the end, StarCraft is, there's not that many tournaments going on, and as a player, the only way I can survive is by playing all of them, right?
Yeah.
So, what can you do?
I think that is the mindset. And also what you said, it really hits the nail on the head in the sense that they own EFG, right? So you either are going to partake in these Saudi-run events, or you're not going to play StarCraft, and many other games really at this point. In the end, we're all just united by our love for the game. Exactly. Well, that's about what I had prepared for you. Do you have any closing words?
I just, if there's if there are any fans watching that were hoping for better results of me out of this tournament, I want to apologize. Of course, I could have done better, I should have done better. And I'll try my best to do better at the next event. But also, my general word for the StarCraft fan, for the RTS fan, is no. I don't think there's any need to be doom and gloom. Just kind of enjoy things as they come. And if you love the game, just consume it. Do whatever you want. Watch the game, play the game, but don't. There's no need to be sad. Think of the good old days. Be nostalgic, because really, good times are what you make of it.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I think StarCraft specifically has been, over the years, very impacted by this doom and gloom culture, which never made a lot of sense to me, because I feel like even at the time when StarCraft was maybe not quite at the top of the world anymore, but still enormous, there was still, even at that time, so many people that were talking about, the sky is falling, and here we are 14 years into the, professional development of the scene, and still looking pretty okay. So yeah, I definitely agree. It's just be positive and enjoy the game. That's all you can do.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's gonna be okay.
Well, thanks for coming on, Diego. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, be sure to leave a like and a comment down below. Get subscribed so you don't miss out on future releases like this one. If you really enjoy what I do here, consider supporting me on Patreon. The link is in the video description. That's all for now, my friends. Until next time.